Greetings, Benjamin J. from Ben's Trains with another in the series. Well, this is the motor out of that 999, pre-war motor. And I wanted to do a follow-up video. I was running this and I encountered a problem. And the motor began to rattle and then it froze. It froze solid. And the problem was the intermediate gear. Now this intermediate gear is made of pot metal. And this had been sitting for decades, 30 years, it's hard to tell how long. And if you look at some of these teeth, you can see that here it looks almost like a saw blade. So really, really badly deteriorated gear. Anyway, I pulled it off, had to pull the wheels off, and put a new intermediate gear in it. Of course, that solved the problem, and it's up and running with no problem. Now, the Marx motor, according to the Marx book, was designed for 800 hours usable lifespan. 800 hours, 24 hours a day is 33.3 days. And that's its usable lifespan. Parts are going to start wearing out. And of course, in this case, that was 80 years ago. So it's always prudent to have some parts. And that's why I say it's really important that when you get these things running, especially if they've been sitting for decades, don't just run them around the track a couple of times and put them up on the shelf. Run them and see if any problems develop. So that's what I always do. I always run these things for at least a day or so. And just to see if anything is going to develop. And in this case, in less than half an hour, that gear started to rattle and then it froze solid. So the problem being, all of the gears and the wheels are pot metal. The drive gear, the output shaft of the motor, is a steel gear. And so this intermediate gear gets all of the abuse because it's being driven by the motor and it's supplying power to the wheels. So the intermediate gear is the gear that takes all of the abuse. And in many, many cases, you'll find one of these motors and it just will not run. And you turn the wheels and it feels almost like a ratchet. And it's always this gear. So just want to do a follow-up video on this. So I pulled the wheels off. While I had it out, I cleaned the bearings and replaced that gear, cleaned the armature, cleaned the brushes. Everything is lubed and tuned, and this motor is running really well, forwards and backwards. And like I said, this motor is 80 years old, and as you can see, it's in fairly decent condition. There is no rust, there is no major damage of any kind. The only problem I've encountered was this worn gear. And like I said, it had been sitting for decades. So very likely the gear just deteriorated over time. You can see, especially on this area right here, how badly it's damaged. And it feels gritty. It feels almost like it's been sandblasted. So it was the gear itself. So anyway, it's really simple to replace it if you have one to replace it with. And that's why it's important that you have a supply of parts. So, pulled the wheels off, pulled the gear off, cleaned everything, put the gear back on, or put the new gear on, reinstalled the wheels, and this is running just absolutely splendidly. So it's a really simple repair if you have the parts to repair it with. That's the key thing with all these motors. Because if you encounter a problem that requires the part, if you don't have the part, you're stuck. There's nothing you can do. Anyway, I just want to do a follow-up video on this. So I'll put this back in the shell, and I'll be running this the rest of the day. I don't foresee any additional problems. That was a really simple repair, and it only took a few minutes to do it. And you get your hands dirty, of course, but that's the fun of doing this, is taking these old engines that have been sitting for sometimes as long as you've been alive, and in just a few minutes bringing them back to life and running them. So this is an old original Marx engine, 1938, 1937, something like that, in really, really decent shape, as you can see. Spoked wheels are in really good shape with no damage. There's no intergranular degeneration of the pot metal, no appreciable amount of rust anywhere. It's a nice old motor, 80 years old. Anyway, I just want to do a quick video on this. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.